Hello, welcome to another Purple Insider Extra. Matthew Coller along with Sam Ekstrom here. And let me pose you a question, Sam, right off the top. Did the Vikings decide too early to give Kirk Cousins a contract extension? And here's what I mean. They did it, and I know it was to create cap space so they could be cap compliant, but before Deshaun Watson made his decision to go to the Cleveland Browns, before the Atlanta Falcons were forced to trade Matt Ryan to the Indianapolis Colts, and before other teams were left sitting around wondering who the heck is going to be their quarterback. The New Orleans Saints are bringing back Jameis Winston. The Carolina Panthers are lost in the woods. It doesn't seem like anybody wants Baker Mayfield, and Jimmy Garoppolo has still not yet been traded. But the Vikings decided that the offers were not good enough for Cousins and extended him for a year. Did they make that decision too quickly?
I think so. I mean, I think that as time goes by, I think that other teams would experience more desperation when you're entering a season in Carolina, for instance, year 3 of the Matt Rule regime. You kind of need to win now, ASAP, and you cannot do it with what you currently have at quarterback. So the price, which may have been fairly low in the initial negotiations, might have gone up to a second or first round picks. And certainly the Russell Wilson market kind of set it pretty high. So I think the Vikings were well within their rights. And after seeing what Watson went for, 3 first round picks, again, keeping that market really, really high. So with these teams that have openings, and we don't know whether or not they were all contacted or by, Kwesi, or if they contacted Kwesi in turn, but it seems like the Vikings could have missed an opportunity here if they wanted to move on, clear up a lot of cap space, and kind of hit the reset button. They chose not to do that. Every move they've made has been, let's run this back. Let's try to keep everybody intact and just try to cross our fingers. Well, you look at what Houston got, for Deshaun Watson, 3 first-round picks, great building blocks for them. Atlanta at least gets to move forward now. They've been mired in mediocrity for 4 years with a historically bad cap hit. And now they at least get to turn the page. And the Vikings don't have the opportunity to do that. Now they can still draft a quarterback, certainly, and groom him for a year or two. But right now, there is no long-term vision for the Vikings. And there's not, it's not like the draft got really exciting either, because you don't have more than your 1 pick per round. And, no 4th round pick either. Chris earned it.
That's right. Once upon a time, the Philadelphia Eagles traded Sam Bradford to the Minnesota Vikings toward the end of training camp after they had drafted Carson Wentz, and they left their options open and found a first-round pick for their quarterback when someone got desperate. Now, that took a quarterback getting hurt in Teddy Bridgewater, but right now there's teams without quarterbacks at all. And the other thing, too, is that the Pittsburgh Steelers decided to go with Mitch Trubisky, who is an inferior quarterback to Kirk Cousins, I would say, by a wide margin. And the other thing that popped up that was kind of interesting in the recent news cycle was The Athletic reporting that Baker Mayfield's camp believed that he was going to get traded for Kirk Cousins and that Cousins was going to be the quarterback in Cleveland, which is, I think, telling to how much buzz there was out there that Cousins could get traded. And if the Vikings had hung on to Kirk Cousins at his $45 million price, they would have had to do something to get cap compliant. Maybe that was, transitioning some money from Adam Thielen or Harrison Smith or Danielle Hunter earlier, as opposed to after Kirk Cousins signed his contract extension, but it would have at least left the door open. And I guess that's another question here is, do you think that the door is completely closed to the potential for Kirk Cousins being traded? He has a no trade clause. However, if there was a location that was really interesting to him or a team that was willing to even tack on years to a contract extension, do you think that the Minnesota Vikings would still consider any phone calls about Kirk Cousins, or are they lock set on him as their quarterback?
Boy, that's a great question. The teams that are quarterback needy right now may or may not be, intriguing to him. I think that he does strike me as a guy that values stability. He wants to know the playbook. He wants to feel security in what's going on. And I'm not sure that he would jump at the chance to move teams in August or something along those lines. Now, if the Vikings leveraged him and said, hey, Kirk, these guys are going to extend you. They've voiced that. You're going to get more guaranteed money. We're not. We're not going to pay you a dime beyond 2023. That does give the team a little bit of leverage. And I think that's the only way this works is if the Vikings say they will commit to you for like 3 more years and give you $100 million, well, money's going to talk. So I think that does leave the door open. And the fact that it was only a 1-year extension, does sort of keep that possibility on the table. But I'm not sure Kirk would be eager to get dealt that late in the game.
Yeah, no, I agree that it would be a tough sell to him. And that's why the contract extension maybe isn't as tough to move as the no trade clause, because then Cousins has all the power in his camp to decide where he wants to go and what he wants to do. And if he wants to be this quarterback for the next 2 years in Minnesota, then he will be that, because that's what his contract says. And I think the only way that they could make some sort of leverage against him to make a move, if there was desperation, would be if they drafted a quarterback this year and said, Kirk, sorry, you're not our long-term quarterback. This isn't happening. It's going to be the Carson Wentz of this situation. When Sam Bradford was in Philly, it's going to be whoever, Desmond Ridder, Sam Howell. That's going to be our guy. And you can either play it out or we can move you somewhere else where they want you there. I also think that you mentioned the Atlanta Falcons. That's the cautionary tale to what the Vikings have done here. That last year, the Falcons blamed everything on their last coach, Dan Quinn. And they said, oh, you know what we need? We need a new coach. That's the solution to all of our problems. And they brought back basically the whole roster. And Arthur Smith wasn't able to get any more out of the Atlanta Falcons than Dan Quinn was before him. I think the Vikings should be very concerned that they've done something really similar, getting themselves stuck in the same rut to what Atlanta had to be. And that eventually this thing's going to run its course either way, but they just decided to kick that can down the road.
Yeah, Atlanta, allowed this to go on for 4 years of losing. The Vikings, think about how impatient these fans were after 2 years of it. Atlanta had to go through it for twice the time. Their quarterback is more expensive than Kirk. He's declining, and he's 4 years older. I mean, that's a tough asset to kind of get out from underneath. And he is a staple in that franchise. He led them to 1 Super Bowl appearance, and he's been there for 15 years. He's like never missed a game. He is iconic in Atlanta, but the fact is that he's a depreciating asset. And Atlanta waited so long that they end up getting very little for him in that trade, and they eat a whole bunch of money. The Vikings had a chance while Kirk's value was still fairly high. There is still some gleam, I think, on him based on his numbers. He's not showing any signs of decline, and he's got incredible durability. There are, believe it or not, there are some good things about Kirk Cousins that would appeal to teams, and the Vikings did not take advantage of that. So if they hope to deal him down the road, they are risking age, decline, just overall depreciation occurring and making that more difficult.
Yeah, the demarcation line has often been the age 34, 35 for quarterbacks that aren't named Tom Brady or Aaron Rodgers. Historically, when you go back and look at similar quarterbacks to Kirk Cousins and the Vikings, if they have a long-term plan to trade him eventually, they have to be concerned about that, and also have to be concerned about that just for next season and whether they're going to be able to win, because as of right now, they've pushed their chips to the middle of the table to win in 2022. So of course, we'll talk a lot more about this on the Purple Insider podcast. Make sure you go check that out, and the brand new purpleinsider.com. Check that out as well, and subscribe to us here on our channel. We'll catch you later. Purple Insider Extra.